Hello, Internet. Art doesn't require an audience, but how great is it to have an audience? I don't think you should make art specifically for anybody in particular, but if people like what you make, that's a really good benefit of creating art. Not only does it benefit you, but the art that you make and the art that you share can change somebody's life without you even knowing it. So, I wanted to talk about that in this video today, and I'll start by giving an example from my personal life. So, this was the early 2010s, and Kid Cudi's album "Man on the Moon," the first one, came out in 2009, and I was in my late teens, going through a hard time, and when I first heard Kid Cudi's album when it first came out, it really affected me. It really resonated with me. It helped me a lot. But there was a moment, and I was really on the verge of, doing some not so great things, having a mental breakdown, and I got in my car and I just drove to this park that I used to go to when I was younger. It has like a stream, it's in the woods, and I just put my headphones on and I sat on a rock next to a river and listened to the entire album, Kid Cudi, Man on the Moon. And I can honestly say that the music that I listened to in that moment saved my life. Now, I know it's super corny to just be a dude listening to Kid Cudi. Kid Cudi saved my life. I know that sounds really corny, but that's my life story. That's part of my experience dealing with mental health and enjoying music and art changing my life. Now, obviously, Kid Cudi is a big artist, and I'm sure that there's literally thousands of people that have a similar story to me, where his album, his music has helped them get through the hard times that they've had in their life. I'm sure you have an artist, a musician that you can think of that has done the same thing for you. Maybe not to the same scale, and maybe the situation is different, but that's the power of art. And it can be on a small scale and still have a huge impact. Like, you never know whose life you could change just by putting out your creations. You never know who is listening. You never know who could be affected by what you make. And something as simple as a song or a drawing or a YouTube video or a painting or, a short film, that could be the inspiration for a turning point in someone's life. You know what I'm saying? Like, art is extremely powerful. And I think nowadays, with music specifically, it's really undervalued. And a lot of people don't appreciate music to the level that they once did. And I'm not even talking about monetarily. Like, if you don't want to pay for music, I totally get that. I don't pay for music that often, to be honest. I have Tidal, which pays the artist better than most of the other streaming platforms, but I'm still just paying like a flat fee every month to listen to everything. So, you know, I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about reach and how it could be affecting people that are listening. You know what I mean? Like, I think people don't value what music can do to change their lives. And I'm not saying that every single piece of art has to be a life changing piece of art. There's nothing wrong with music that's focused on like passive listening and just being like a good backdrop for certain settings. And that's all it needs to be. There's tons of music like that. That's great. But I find myself listening to music and crying so often, not even because always like the lyrics are touching me in a certain way or like, whatever, the content of the music is like relevant to my life. It's not even always that. Sometimes I'll listen to someone's song or watch a video of someone playing music and I just start crying because I can't even believe that this person was brave enough to put this music out. And that in itself is a powerful feeling because it's scary, you know? Like, it's one thing to make music that's vulnerable and put yourself into it, put it out into art so that you can reflect, within your own mind and see kind of what comes out. That in itself takes a lot of bravery. But what takes even more bravery is sharing that art with the world. You know? I always kind of joke like there's certain things that if I was to just say them out loud as statements or like write them so that you can just read them and that's all it is, people would feel very uncomfortable reading them if it's stuff that is coming from me about my life, about how I feel. But when you put it into music and you decorate those thoughts and those feelings and those words, you surround them with a backdrop of music, it makes it a little bit easier for people to understand and to ingest because they don't just have to take in the content of what you're saying. They can take in the whole music, the whole song or album, whatever it is, any kind of art that you're making. I'm talking about music specifically for this example, though, but this is relevant to other things, all forms of art. It's easier for people a lot of the times to take in difficult concepts and ideas and lyrics about certain life experience, and it doesn't even all have to be negative, but art and music make it easier to ingest concepts that are harder for people to confront a lot of the times. And similar to Kid Cudi, I felt like I had nobody in my life at the time that I was really struggling with these problems, and that album really helped me. So hearing somebody that dedicated so much of their time and their career to creating an album about their mental health struggles, I felt like I wasn't alone. And that feeling in itself was enough for me to get through that day and to keep going with my life. And I've had lots of different experiences in that way with different forms of art and movies and, whatever. But this was an early one in my, like young adult life when I was really having a hard time mental health wise, that I can honestly say art saved my life. And that's really all I can ask for with my music and my art now and my videos. Like this YouTube channel used to be more just me complaining and rambling about my mental health struggles, which is what I needed at the time. And I think it helped some people. But now my focus is to just remind artists and creative people that one, you can make whatever you want. You don't have to worry about anybody else. Just make what you want, figure out everything else after. And two, what you're making is very powerful. Art is a very, very powerful thing in the world. And something that you might just need to make for your own sake and get out so that you can feel better in that moment. If you were to share that with the world, you could potentially save somebody else. You could potentially help another person just by you making art. And I think that's incredible. So don't be afraid to create. Don't be afraid to express yourself in as honest and vulnerable way as you can. And don't be afraid to share your creations with the world. That's all I got for this week. I hope you enjoy. I put out a new video every Sunday. So if you like this video, you can come back next week for a new one. And I will see you then.